History's most powerful civilizations. When Qing China became the largest empire in Asia. In the 18th century, one empire stood at the center of Asia. It ruled over one of the largest populations on Earth. It controlled some of the widest lands in the world. Its emperors commanded armies across deserts, mountains, forests, and grasslands. Its imperial capital was Beijing. Its rulers were not Han Chinese by origin. They were Manchu conquerors from the northeast. And yet, for more than a century, they ruled China, Mongolia, Tibet, Xinjiang, and vast borderlands with extraordinary power. This was the Qing Empire during the age of Kangxi and Qianlong, a period later remembered as the High Qing. In Chinese memory, it is often called the Kang Qian Shengshi, the prosperous age of Kangxi and Qianlong. But this golden age was not born peacefully. It was built through rebellion, war, diplomacy, discipline, agriculture, population growth, and imperial ambition. And at its height, Qing China was not just a great Chinese dynasty, it was one of the most powerful empires on Earth. The story begins with uncertainty. The Qing had conquered Beijing in 1644, but conquering the capital was not the same as controlling the empire. China's imperial territory was truly enormous. The south was wealthy, proud, and difficult to rule. Many people still remembered the Ming dynasty. Some saw the Qing as outsiders, others waited to see whether this new dynasty would survive. Then came a crisis that could have destroyed everything. The revolt of the three feudatories. Three powerful military rulers in southern China rose against the Qing. They controlled important provinces. They had soldiers, money, and local influence. For a young Kangxi Emperor, this was a dangerous moment. If the rebellion succeeded, the Qing could collapse. China could split again. The Manchu dynasty could become only a brief interruption in Chinese history. But Kangxi did not break. He chose to fight. The war was long and difficult. But Kangxi and the Qing court gradually defeated the rebels. The victory mattered because it proved something. The Qing were not just conquerors sitting in Beijing. They could command the empire. They could defeat powerful internal enemies. They could survive a national crisis. After the rebellion was crushed, Kangxi turned his attention to the sea. Off the southeast coast lay Taiwan. At that time, Taiwan was controlled by the Zheng family, Ming loyalists who still resisted Qing rule. As long as Taiwan remained outside Qing control, the old Ming cause still had a base. So in 1683, Qing forces moved against Taiwan. The Qing navy, led by Xilang, defeated the Zheng forces near Penghu. Soon after, Taiwan came under Qing rule. This is why 1683 is a powerful starting point for this story. By then, Kangxi had crushed the Great Southern Rebellion and removed the last major Ming loyalist stronghold. The Qing dynasty was no longer fighting simply to survive, it was ready to expand. But the greatest challenge to Qing power was not only in China proper, it was in Inner Asia. To understand Qing greatness, we must look beyond the Great Wall. For centuries, Chinese dynasties had faced powerful peoples from the steppe. The northern frontier was never just a border. It was a world of horses, alliances, trade, raids, diplomacy, and rival empires. The Qing understood this world better than many earlier Chinese dynasties, because the Qing rulers were Manchu. They were not simply Chinese emperors, they were also Inner Asian rulers. They spoke to Mongol princes, they used marriage alliances, they respected Tibetan Buddhism as a political and spiritual force. They understood that to rule China safely they had to master the frontier. And on that frontier, one enemy became especially dangerous, the Dzungar Khanate. The Dzungars were not a small tribe, they were a major steppe power. They controlled important lands in Central Asia, they threatened Mongolia, they influenced Tibet. They challenged Qing authority across the northwest. For the Qing emperors, the Dzungars were not just a border problem. They were a rival empire. Kangxi fought them. Yongzheng contained them. Qianlong finally destroyed their power. This struggle lasted for generations. It was one of the great imperial contests of early modern Asia. Under Kangxi, Qing armies moved deep into the north and west. In 1696, Kangxi personally led a major campaign against Galdan, the Dzungar leader. This was not just symbolic. The emperor himself entered the steppe world. He showed Mongol allies and enemies that the Qing ruler was not afraid to campaign beyond the wall. After the defeat of Galdan, Qing influence over Mongolia became stronger. The northern frontier became more secure, but the Dzungar problem did not disappear. It waited, it returned. And under Qianlong, the final contest came. Qianlong inherited an empire that was already huge, but he wanted more than stability. He wanted glory. He saw himself as a universal ruler. He was Emperor of China, Khan to the Mongols, patron of Tibetan Buddhism, master of a multi-ethnic empire. Under him, Qing power reached its greatest territorial extent. The campaigns against the Dzungars opened the way for Qing control of Xinjiang. This was one of the most important expansions in Chinese imperial history. It pushed Qing influence far into Central Asia. It gave the empire control over deserts, oases, trade routes, and strategic frontier lands. It also meant that Qing China had defeated the most dangerous steppe rival of its age. For centuries, Chinese dynasties had feared powerful northern and western nomads, but in the High Qing, the balance shifted. The empire did not merely defend the frontier, it crossed it absorbed it, it ruled it. This is what made the Qing Empire different. It was not only a Chinese dynasty, it was a continental empire. It ruled farmers in the Yangtze River Valley, merchants in coastal cities, Manchu nobles in the northeast, Mongol banners on the grasslands, Tibetan religious institutions, Muslim communities in the northwest, indigenous peoples in Taiwan, and many other groups across a vast imperial space. The Qing court had to govern different peoples in different ways. In China proper, it used the Confucian bureaucracy. Officials took examinations, taxes were collected, granaries were managed, canals moved grain, laws and rituals supported imperial rule. In Mongolia, the Qing worked through banners, princes, and alliances. In Tibet, the Qing used military presence, political supervision, and religious patronage. In Xinjiang, the empire governed a newly conquered frontier through military and administrative systems. The Qing were powerful because they did not rule every place in exactly the same way. They adapted, they negotiated, they absorbed, they controlled. But military conquest alone does not create a golden age. An empire also needs food, people, roads, taxes, peace. And during the High Qing, China's population grew dramatically. New crops such as sweet potatoes, maize, and peanuts helped support people in areas where traditional grains were harder to grow. Agriculture expanded into hillsides, frontier lands, and new regions. Markets became more connected. The Grand Canal and river networks helped move grain and goods. Large cities flourished. Beijing remained the political heart of the empire. The lower Yangtze region remained one of the richest economic centers in the world. Porcelain, silk, tea, cotton goods, books, and handicrafts moved through regional and global trade. In the 18th century, Qing China was not an isolated sleeping giant. It was a massive agricultural and commercial civilization. Its scale was almost difficult to imagine. Millions of villages, hundreds of millions of people. A government that tried to keep grain prices stable, an elite culture built around scholarship, calligraphy, poetry, history, and classical learning, a court that collected art, compiled books, sponsored projects, and presented itself as the guardian of civilization. Kangxi was one of the longest ruling emperors in Chinese history. He was not only a warrior ruler, he also wanted to be seen as a learned Confucian monarch. He studied Chinese classics. He supported scholarship. He toured the empire. He presented himself as a ruler who could bring order after chaos. His reign gave the Qing dynasty legitimacy. Then came Yongzheng. He is sometimes less famous than Kangxi and Qianlong, but he was crucial. Yongzheng strengthened the state. He worked hard to improve administration. He tightened finances. He fought corruption. He made the machinery of empire more disciplined. If Kangxi secured the dynasty, Yongzheng made it more efficient. He saw himself as a universal ruler. He was Emperor of China, Khan to the Mongols, patron of Tibetan Buddhism, master of a multi-ethnic empire. Qianlong wanted the world to see the Qing as a grand empire. He sponsored art. He collected ancient works. He ordered massive literary projects. He celebrated military victories. He traveled through the empire on southern inspection tours. These tours were not just vacations. They were political theater. The emperor showed himself to the people. He inspected waterworks. He honored local elites. He reminded the wealthy south that the Manchu emperor was also the son of heaven. Everything about Qianlong's reign was meant to communicate greatness. The empire was rich. The borders were wide. The population was growing. The enemies had been defeated. The court was magnificent. For a moment, it seemed as if Qing power had solved the old problems of Chinese history. Internal rebellion had been crushed. Taiwan had been brought under control, Mongolia was secured, Tibet was within the Qing imperial system, Xinjiang was conquered, the Dzungar threat was gone. The empire had reached a level of power that few dynasties had ever achieved. But every golden age carries a hidden tension. The same things that made Qing China powerful also created pressure. Population growth meant more workers, more farmers, more production, but it also meant more mouths to feed, more land pressure, more competition, more stress on local society. The empire was enormous, but enormous empires are difficult to govern. Messages took time, officials could hide problems, corruption could grow, local suffering could be invisible in the palace. Qianlong's court was brilliant, but it was also expensive. Military campaigns cost money, imperial display cost money, bureaucratic control became harder as the population expanded. And near the end of Qianlong's long reign, signs of decline began to appear. The ruler who had inherited a disciplined empire slowly became surrounded by luxury, flattery, and powerful favorites. One of the most famous was High Qing, an official remembered for extraordinary corruption. By the 1790s, the empire still looked magnificent from the outside. But beneath the surface, the pressures were growing. This is why 1796 matters. That year, Qianlong formally abdicated in favor of his son, the High Qing Emperor. He did this partly out of respect for his grandfather Kangxi, because he did not want to officially reign longer than Kangxi had. But even after abdicating, Qianlong remained influential until his death. The age of unquestioned Qing glory was ending. So why does the Kangxi and Qianlong age belong in a series about history's most powerful civilizations? Because in this period, Qing China met almost every standard of imperial greatness. It defeated major internal enemies, it removed rival regimes, it expanded across Inner Asia, it defeated the Dzungars, one of the most formidable powers on its frontier. It incorporated Taiwan, it secured Mongolia, it projected authority over Tibet, it brought Xinjiang into the empire. It ruled one of the largest populations in the world. It supported one of the largest agricultural economies on earth. It became a political, cultural, and military giant. And unlike some empires that burned brightly for only a moment, the High Qing lasted for more than a century. Its power was not just battlefield power. It was administrative power, demographic power, economic power, cultural power, geographic power. It was the power to hold together a vast and diverse world. Kangxi gave the dynasty survival and legitimacy. Yongzheng gave it discipline and administrative strength. Qianlong gave it expansion and imperial grandeur. Together, their age became one of the most powerful periods in Chinese history. But the story is not simple triumph. The Qing Empire was strong because it conquered. It was rich because millions labored. It was stable because the state worked constantly to contain disorder. And it was vulnerable because its own success created new pressures. By the end of the 18th century, the empire was still huge, still wealthy, still impressive. But the seeds of future crisis had already been planted. That is what makes the Kang Qian Golden Age so fascinating. It was both a peak and a warning, a moment when Qing China looked like one of the strongest empires in the world, and a moment when the very size of that empire began to test the limits of imperial rule. In 1683, the Qing Empire had secured China and Taiwan. By the age of Qianlong, it had stretched deep into Inner Asia. It had defeated its strongest frontier enemies. It had built one of the largest empires on earth. For more than a century, from Kangxi to Qianlong, Qing China stood as a giant of the 18th century world, a civilization of palaces and farms, of scholars and soldiers, of Confucian rituals and Inner Asian conquest, of immense prosperity and hidden pressure. This was the High Qing. This was the Kang Qian Golden Age. And this was the moment when Qing China became one of history's most powerful civilizations,